Hey there, my name is Max, and today I'd like to tell you about the survival horror game The Evil Within 2, specifically the second chapter because this is where the gameplay really gets started. Just in case you're completely unfamiliar with The Evil Within 2, the majority of this game is about protagonist Sebastian Castellanos exploring a simulation made up of interconnected minds. This means that the game doesn't conform to the rules of our reality. Think of it kinda like The Matrix, but spookier. Now I picked The Evil Within 2 specifically because its tutorial level does two things exceptionally well. Firstly, it creates a tense/unsettling atmosphere through its usage of surreal imagery, framing, and impossible space, while also remaining a fairly straightforward tutorial level that familiarizes the player with various aspects of the game. Secondly, the game clearly conveys to the player where they need to go. This is easier said than done and is made all the more impressive thanks to the constantly changing environments and the aforementioned impossible space. Now how does the game do this? Well, there are a lot of subtle ways that the designers guide players through levels. Like, a lot. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to focus on the four most prevalent ways: lighting, motion, sound, and color. In particular, keep in mind the color red, as we'll be seeing a lot of it in this level. Now let's jump into the game. The second chapter begins with Sebastian in a police station built from his memories. There's lots to look at in here, but let's just hurry on for now in order to get into the meat of things. As you move to the back of the office, a mirror facing you audibly cracks and shines a brilliant light in your direction. These mirrors serve as gateways to and from Sebastian's safe room, making them incredibly important. You can tell when a mirror is around due to its distinctive sounds and the fact that later on Claire de Lune begins to play when you approach. Not even 2 minutes into the level, and already the importance of light/sound is emphasized. As Sebastian moves through the mirror, he has a flashback and finds himself in a dark room, the only visible object being an illuminated door. Upon entering, Sebastian is then faced with a view of a far-off doorway adorned with flowing crimson curtains. With all four of our main indicators, lighting, motion, color, and sound, pointing towards this door, the only way it could be more obvious would be if it had a bright neon sign pointing to it that said, "Hey stupid, over here." But this is the developers playing with your preconceptions. As you get closer, it becomes apparent that it's actually just a painting of a door. However, a clicking sound and Sebastian's surprised backwards glance alerts the player to something new. The doorway has somehow appeared where we enter. This marks the first of many visual tricks the game plays on you to keep the atmosphere tense. Next, we follow some lights through a hallway to another door. In here, the music changes and we are faced with the unusual sight of a man reliving his death indefinitely. Here the player is allowed to safely investigate this phenomena and see that time slows in the cube. Then, when these cubes are encountered later on, the player will understand the consequences of getting caught in one. Anyways, we are once again let out of the room by his various lights and come to a dead end where the exit is barricaded. But the obvious contrast of the white scratches on the brown wooden floor clearly indicate that the barricade is movable. Once more, the light guides you into the next area and up a rather long staircase. Along the way, rooms illuminated with red lights mark certain extra documents the player can find, and though these are optional, it still trains the player to pay attention to strangely lit side areas. At this time, the player can also activate multiple events that build the tension and lets the player know they're near something dangerous. But keep in mind, they haven't actually found an enemy yet. As of right now, this has all just been to set the mood and gently ease the player into more demanding gameplay. At the top of the staircase, there's more red curtains that draws the player into darkness where there's a flickering light for them to follow. Upon crossing this room, the player then sees the game's first enemy, a knife-wielding maniac who is also revealed as the source of the time cubes. The player is then introduced, rather suddenly, to the stealth mechanic of the game. While this is very stressful for first-time players, the game actually asks very little of them for now, as it is very easy to avoid the man. In the next hallway, the player is led forward by the lights, the eerie photographs, and the swinging shadow of what is revealed to be a large pendulum in the upcoming room. As the player is then drawn to the staircase once more, the sudden motion of an aperture closing causes a jolt of unease that sits with the player as they make their way upwards. At the top of the stairs, there is another hallway with a distant light to once again run towards. However, the murderer appears in a sudden blue flash that tends to jolt players back. In actuality, though, it's impossible for the murderer to notice Sebastian in this section. This cleverly teaches the player that caution will be needed when entering future rooms, but not punishing them for a lack of it just yet. Once more, we follow the lights until we approach a far-off, grotesquely crimson statue. The lights and color clearly draw the eye straight here, giving your brain plenty of time to try and make sense of the imagery. Also, the framing of it above you makes you subconsciously feel smaller as you approach this monstrosity. However, you don't spend much time there before an audible ding draws your attention to an elevator with light spilling out of it. If you happen to glance near the elevator before it opens, a bloody trail also helps lead you towards it. Once you get out, you find the way forward thanks to, you guessed it, more lights. Then the player wanders through the dark room, weaving their way through hanging bodies until they spy a red eye that once approached triggers a whooshing noise behind the player. Turning around shows that the room has changed, and that there's now a camera by the back wall, another usage of impossible space. Approaching the camera replicates the whoosh, and the player turns around once more to find a door that wasn't there. Approaching the door, well, causes this to happen. At this point, most people should be properly confused, but keep in mind that all you've been doing is walking back and forth across the same room. Anyways, turning around once more and approaching the newfound mirror triggers a chase between this monster, named the Guardian, and poor old Sebastian. Now this chase is pretty straightforward and short, but if your heart isn't pumping like crazy your first time through, I'd be surprised. The Guardian's disturbed noises and Sebastian's frantic glances backwards let you know without looking that the Guardian is always dangerously close, making you desperate to make it through the door with the red exit light as quick as possible. The buzzing noises keep the tension high as the player is now tasked with finding a quick way out of the room they trapped themselves in. Well, not to keep beating the same drum, but if you look for the light, you'll soon see a stepladder and a dangling ventilation cover whose motion attracts your eyes to the exit. Next, you crawl through the vents until coming across a rat that gets decimated by the Guardian's buzzsaw, and if you aren't quick enough, it'll catch you too. Now it'll deal a little damage, but it won't kill you. In fact, the only way to die in this level is to either be caught by the murderer during the cover tutorial or the Guardian in the chase, so you might be wondering, why even let the player take damage here if it doesn't mean they might die? Well, I can answer that with a quick aside. This fixes a minor flaw that exists in another great survival horror game, Dead Space 2. You see, in Dead Space, the player is unable to aim their weapons well in vents. This unintentionally tells the player that because they can't defend themselves in vents, they'll never need to. Then when the game tries to scare you while you move through the vents, it just falls flat. Not the case in Evil Within. This attack lets you know that just because you're in a vent doesn't mean you're safe. Then later, when you have a gun and figure out you can aim it in vents, you start wondering when you might need to. Now, you might never need to, but the fact that the possibility exists stops the player from getting complacent. Lastly, we have one final chase down a developing room illuminated crimson, one final encounter with the murderer/monster, and this area draws to a close. Another important aspect of the game learned here is that the more dangerous monsters all have distinct and memorable sounds that the player quickly learns to associate with them. For example, the killer always appears with the same poop sound effect and is accompanied by classical music. Likewise, sawing noises or laughter is a dead giveaway that the Guardian is lurking nearby. This means that in future encounters there will be times where a player will hear a dangerous enemy coming before they see it. Unlike a scripted jump scare, this naturally ratchets up the tension while still giving the player time to prepare themselves so they don't feel cheated. So, to summarize, this level introduces you to the concepts of stealth, the cover system, the fact that the game has optional events to trigger, collectible items, as well as how you can find them thanks to the lighting, and how to maneuver your way through the levels based on its visuals. You're also introduced to how the game likes to bend the rules of reality, and how this is always accompanied by some sort of telling sound, showing you how important auditory signs are as well. It also introduces you to two future bosses, and gives you a small taste of their abilities. Also, the various chase scenes should tip you off to the fact that if you feel unprepared for a fight, you should try running away, since this can help you survive quite a few deadly scrapes in the future. This level teaches you all of this, most of it without telling it to you directly, and all while showing you some pretty unsettling visuals, which is why this level is so effective. Anyways, I hope you found this interesting. Thanks for watching.